to the Women in AI podcast series, third episode called AI and Human Rights, Aligning Technology with the Humanity. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with extraordinary guest, Dr. Helga Molbæk-Steensig. Helga is a postdoctoral research at the European University Institute and holds a PhD in law. Her expertise spans human rights law with a fascinating focus on its intersection with artificial intelligence. Helga has applied AI in her empirical legal studies, showcasing how technology can tackle legal research and contribute to advancing human rights. Her work is based on the practical applications of AI, exploring both its potential to enhance access to justice and the critical ethical considerations needed to align AI development with human rights principles. Today, she will share her journey, insights, and vision for a future where AI supports and protects fundamental rights. Helga, thank you for joining us for the Women in AI podcast series. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you so much for having me, Nirvana.
Thank you for joining. Can you tell us, can you start by sharing your journey in the field of human rights law and what led you to explore the intersection of AI and human rights?
Of course. So I have a background in law, but not entirely. I also I did an interdisciplinary degree, but stumbled on human rights law as my favorite part of that. And almost immediately after graduating, I started teaching human rights law at Copenhagen University, and absolutely loved that. Ended up studying the European Court of Human Rights, and then ended up sort of by chance in the intersection with AI, because I was doing empirical legal scholarship, and I really wanted my own data set to explore the case law of the European Court of Human Rights, but I wasn't sure how to make it. And by chance, I stumbled over my now dear co-author, Alexander Quimi, who was making an AI that was reading case law of the European Court of Human Rights. And then we just got started on that. So sort of by chance, I ended up publishing quite a few things using AI, and also using my human rights background to have discussions about what AI is supposed to be doing right before the generative AI explosion. So I ended up being one of those people who were ahead, but totally by chance.
Thank you. Thank you. And you said you used AI in empirical legal studies. Can you tell us more about how AI is transforming legal research and what role it could play in improving access to justice or advancing human rights?
Yes, yes, I would love to. So the field of law traditionally has been quite conservative when it comes to the use of new methodologies. A lot of scholarship still today uses what's called doctrinal legal scholarship, which is basically the method that you learn in law school of reading the law and reading case law and making sense of what's going on. But there has been a movement in the past, say 10, 20 years, towards empirical legal studies. I did my thesis on empirical legal scholarship, and I was in a minority still. It's not that usual. One of the reasons why empirical legal studies haven't really taken off is that law is not, or case law is not, a perfect empirical object. It doesn't. It has a lot of variety inside it. It's very heterogeneous. Judges tend to refer to the same ideas with in a lot of different ways, with a lot of different words, and that makes it a little bit difficult to conduct empirical legal studies on law, on case law. But what's happening now, and we're not quite there yet, but we're getting there very close, is that, of course, AI is very good at that. They're very good at looking for the same kind of things as that expressed in slightly different ways, because that's what AI is trained to do, especially the large language models. And that really opens up the floodgates of the kind of empirical legal research we can do. And I'm very excited to see where it's going to take us next, because that's a field that's really opening up.
Yes, I agree with you with opening the completely new field. Tell me more, why is it critical to align AI technology with the human rights principles, especially in today's fast-paced technological environment?
I mean, this is a very general one, and I think we have
Mhm.
already seen a lot of people who have given the excellent reasons for this. I think for if we look at the technology that Eloquence is developing, the generative AI, the reason is really that it's going to be everywhere. It's going to be omnipresent in our lives. It's going to be raising our kids. You know, I have a friend who has a 1-year-old daughter whose first word beyond mom and dad was Alexa, and that's going to be the norm from now on. So the, it's going to be everywhere. It's going to inform all of our conversations. I think very soon we're going to have a situation where if you disagree on a fact, you're not going to say, why don't you Google that? You're going to say, why don't you ask your AI about that?
Yes.
So we really have to make sure that it's going to be truthful, and we're going to have to make sure that it's going to be ethical. And of course, it has to be aligned with human rights. Human rights have the benefit over other ethical systems of being nearly universally accepted, of being binding law, we have a lot of case law on human rights, so we know how to balance between different rights of different individuals, human rights and other important considerations, and that just makes it a very practical and binding framework that we can use to guide AI development.
I also agree with you on this, and especially for we will not just say Google it, we will say ask Alexa or however we call our AI bot or whatever we are using on the applications. And how do we effectively assess whether AI technologies comply with the human rights standards? Are there specific tools, frameworks, or interdisciplinary approaches that you find particularly useful for such assessments?
So this is also a field that's exploding. This is a field that's exploding
Mhm.
because we really need it. So the kind of work that I'm doing with my background is interdisciplinary assessments, and it's very resource intensive. We have a lot of human beings who are looking at the same technological object, and we're trying to assess it, trying to make sure that it is in line with the laws, and also with the standards that we wanted to take on. But that cannot work alone, because of how AI is trained. It needs something that's also automatic, so that we can do this a million times over the same iteration. So we are working in collaboration with engineers to use the human alignment tools. There are these, they have all sorts of methods. There's red teaming, where you try and use one AI to make other AI make a mistake, and then you punish it if it does. And there's all sorts of data sets where you test that AIs are answering in ways that we think are good. So these things have to go together. So I see my job as not really the be all end all for interdisciplinary assessment, but an important part of it.
I understand. And we are speaking about the assessments. Can you tell me your role and a role of your institute in the Eloquence project?
So we are in charge of conducting the assessments. We are aligning Eloquence outcomes not just with human rights, but also with EU values. But EU values are
Mhm.
best expressed in human rights terms, because that's where we find it in the charter of the EU. And we are conducting human assessments, and we are informing the automatic assessments that are also being undertaken.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope that you are finding it joyful to work in the Eloquence Consortium. And about we will just move the focus on the role of women in the world of AI and ethics. The Women in AI campaign aimed to highlight the contributions of the women in advancing ethical and responsible AI. We had talk with the colleague Agnes, and she is doing a great job in the social robotics. And on the other side, you are dealing with the ethics in AI. Have you encountered gender-related challenges in your work? And how do you think we can encourage more women to enter these critical areas of AI?
So personally, I've had a very good experience with the interacting with the AI community. I have not experienced any harassment or any problems like that. I know it's not like that for everybody. I think perhaps on the technical side it's harder because it's very much a male environment. But in my field, it's actually a little bit the opposite, a little bit the other way around. So at least in Denmark, where I'm originally from and where I originally taught, more women than men are studying law. Law has very much become a women's subject. And in my experience, having gone into AI and law studies, there's a lot of powerful and extremely smart and capable women, and also young women, early career scholars, who are undertaking this work. And I think one of the reasons might be that women, and I don't know if that's a general thing or if it's something that's happening right now, but I think since AI and law is really growing, it's really up and coming, you need someone who is prepared to learn new things, and who also is prepared to go into a field, maybe also a little bit tactically, thinking strategically, thinking that there will be jobs here. And as we know, it's employment rates for women in all fields are lower than for men. So we have good reason to follow the new interesting things that are happening in which there are jobs. So my experience has been that I have interacted with a lot of extraordinary women in the field of law and human rights law and AI.
And do you find more extraordinary women in Denmark, in Italy, or in the whole Europe? It doesn't matter.
It's very much international, isn't it? The field of AI and law. It's not really something that happens in little local universities. It's something that happens very much in international environments. That said, there are a lot of Italian women in the AI and human rights that are really taking off. Yeah.
I understand. And what advice would you give to the women aspiring to work in AI or legal research, particularly those interested in the ethical and human rights aligned AI?
I think I would advise to just get into it and not be afraid to try and learn the more technical side of it. It feels very foreign when you come from a law background, regardless of whether you're a woman or not, I think, but maybe we are a little bit more tending towards thinking that we're not good enough than men are. But even though it is intimidating, there are a lot of things that you can learn about AI and have an actual insight that takes into account the technical aspects without having to do any coding yourself. And without having to understand all of the math. You have to know a little bit of math. You have to understand what's going on, and you have to also be humble and recognize that it's not your field. That there are people working in this field who know things that you are that are so far removed from what you are specialized in. But it is possible to understand enough that what you're saying is not nonsense. Because I think there's a big danger, especially lawyers. Lawyers have a tendency to go into things and think that they know everything, of missing out on important details that impact also the ethical part of AI.
Yes, I agree, especially for the lawyers that are thinking that they are knowing everything. And for the last question, of this podcast, looking ahead, what is your vision for the future of AI as a tool to promote and protect human rights? And how can women play a leadership role in shaping that future? Is there
So
any spot for a woman to have a leadership role?
I think there certainly is. As I mentioned before, this is a field that's coming out right now, which means that anyone, especially people who are early in their careers, can choose right now to start studying this and be one of the foremost experts in a very short time, because it has been such a short time that it's here at all. So in that sense, we don't have a large cast of old experts who know everything already. So for people who want to make something of themselves from an earlier part in the earlier position in the career, this is a very, very good field to get into. And I think, like, looking more generally at the future of AI in general, I would say that when we study human rights, an important thing to take into account, which a lot of people who study AI and human rights are at risk of ignoring, is that humans are very good at violating each other's rights without the help of any AI. So what we're looking for is not to just say no to technology, say no to this, no to that. That's not going to help us, because human rights are already getting violated all over the world. And moreover, we have a bunch of situations where we lack sufficient resources to ensure good human rights implication for all. And AI is in a position to alleviate that to some extent, because it can help us make better use of our resources. That said, there are also dangers. AIs are no better than us. They're trained on data that we have created, and they are at risk of perpetuating biases and discrimination, and they're at risk of, for example, discriminating much more efficiently than humans can do. So there's work to be done. I think it can be done. What I have learned for now about alignment and about the sort of technologies that you can take into that you can incorporate to help an AI overcome these biases, I find it reassuring. Also because we have spent the last 70 odd years trying to teach humans not to be biased, and it's difficult. So if so if there is a chance that the AI could be slightly more efficient at learning that would be lovely.
Yeah, I agree with you totally. Thank you once again for this podcast, and thank you for replying on the questions. I hope that this series will a bit open the eyes for women who are in the field of human rights, or who are studying the law and doesn't know if they're going to go on the right or left direction of the specialization in law. So thank you once again.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, and bye.
And bye.